basic matrix operation and multiply matrices. Let's go through this worksheet. So find order of each. Remember, order just means like row by column. So what's the order of this guy? Row by column. Rows go left and right, and columns go up and down. I guess down more. So this is 3 rows, row 1, row 2, row 3, and 2 columns, column 1, column 2. So this would be a 3 by 2. Alright, so I do this one. This has 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1 column. So this is a 4 by 1. So again, row 1, row 2, column 1, column 2, column 3. So this will be a 2 by 3. And then this has 1 column, 1 row, sorry, and then 4 columns. So 1 by 4. So that's how I do order of a matrix. For an indicate operation, if the matrix does not exist, right, impossible. So we're just going to do what it says. So here they want us to add them. Now remember, adding matrices, you literally just add a corresponding part. So it's just like doing 4 math problems in one. So it will be 12 plus negative 6, which is 6. Negative 5 plus 11, which is 6. Negative 8 plus negative 17 is negative 15. And then negative 3 plus 2, so negative 1. And there we go. That's adding those two matrices. Same thing here. We just distribute that negative 5 to every single thing in the matrix. I get negative 25, negative 30, 20, negative 20, 10, 5. Over here now, you can only add corresponding parts. So in this case, we're going to have an issue because you say the 9 goes up to 12, and the 8 goes, negative 8 goes up to 2, but the 4, that guy? Don't know. So this is not possible, or impossible. They have to, when you add or subtract, they have to be exactly alike. So impossible there. This one, just like the one above it, we just distribute, and we get 6u, 3v squared, and 3u. That u's ugly. There we go. Multiply matrix is a little more complicated. Determine whether each matrix product is defined. If so, state the dimension of the product. So I want to know if I can multiply these things. Can I multiply a 2 by 3 times a 3 by 4? And you could in that case, right? All you want to do is check if the middle two match. And they do. Little happy face. And then you get the outside. 2 by 4. So this would be a 2 by 4 matrix. Right? So the next you check if the middle two can multiply. And they can. So you'd get a 5 by 5. Next one, the middle two do not match actually. So not possible or impossible. And then over here, same idea. They do not match. So you cannot multiply. Find each product if possible. So we're going to multiply these two matrices. First thing we're going to do is check if you can multiply if it's possible. So this is a 2 by 2. And this is a 2 by 2. That doesn't guarantee it though. So we got to check if the middle two match. They do, which means we're going to get a 2 by 2 at the end. So there's lots of ways to multiply matrices. The way I was always taught was to do something like this. It's like a big old game of Battleship. So we want to write out our 2 by 2. So this is row 1, row 2, column 1, column 2. And then on things here, remember, we multiply row by column. So it's rows of the first times columns of the second. So we have to separate the rows here. Row 1, row 2. Then I'm going to do the columns on this one. Column 1, column 2. And then if I want to, so now when I multiply things, like let's say I want this one right here, right? That is row 1, column 1. So I'm going to multiply row 1 by column 1. That's all it is. So that's going to be negative 5 times negative 2. So we multiply the first two things. Negative 5 times negative 2. Plus, it's always plus the next pair. So I do the first pair, and I do the second pair. Negative 5 times 3. Let's put negative 15. So I get 10 plus negative 15, which would get me negative 5. That's all it's going to be. You just got to do every single one of these. So if I want the one right here, this is row 1 and column 2. Right, so that point right there, row 1, column 2. So row 1, times column 2. So this guy times this guy. So multiply the first two, negative 15 times negative 3, that is 15. Plus multiply these guys, negative 5 times 5 is negative 25. Add them up and you get negative 10. Okay, then we move on to the bottom one here. Row 2, column 1. So row 2, column 1. So that's row 2 and column 1. So again, multiply the first pair. So that's 2. Plus multiply the second pair. 2 times 3 is 6. So I get 8. The one right here, row 2, column 2. So row 2, column 2. First pair, 3. Plus the second pair, 10. Did in the wrong spot. So 13. There you go, and that's our answer. Now I'm going to do this one. This one looks worse. Well, first let's double check you can multiply. I always forget that. So this is a 2 by 3, right? 2 rows, 3 columns. And this is a 2 by 3, 2 rows, 3 columns. And they actually can't. Not possible. So, not possible. We cannot multiply these two. That makes it a little easier. So there we go. And let's do a few of these. So this one, again, first thing we had to check we can't. This is a 2 by 1, 2 rows, 1 column. And then this is a 1 by 2, 1 row, 2 columns. Just like that. We can multiply these two to match, and you get a 2 by 2. So I'm gonna do this one the same way I did the first one. Then I'm gonna try a different way for the next couple that I also kind of like. So if I was doing this, it's a 2 by 2, row 1, row 2, column 1, column 2. Then here again, we want to lay it out. It's rows of the first, so there's 2 rows, and columns of the second. So rows of the first, columns of the second. So if I want the one right here, row 1, column 1, it's just be row 1 times column 1, so that's 12. If I want the one right here, right, row 1, column 2, so it'll be row 1 times column 2, so 4. Then you get down, row 2, column 1. So you played Battleship before, it's the same thing. Row 2, column 1, so negative 24. Row 2, column 2. So row 2 and column 2 is negative 8. And there we go. Done. So let's go to the next one. Again, first thing I'm going to check is if I can, this is a 2 by 3. Right? 2 rows, but 3 columns. And this is a 3 by 1. And I can multiply them. You get a 2 by 1. So I'm just going to do it different way. I think the way I showed in the notes. So that way is you raise the second one a little higher. So I'm going to do it right here because I have space. That was bad. And up here I'm going to put 7, 7, 7, 2, 4. The way this way works is, so you notice to me 2 by 1. You just, in between the spaces, you draw a line. And there we go. There's our 2 by 1. 2 rows, 1 column. So it just kind of separates it from the start. So for the value right here, this is like a little matrix, if you could see it. There we go. So for the top one right there, you get negative 6 times 7 plus 4 times 2 plus negative 9 times 4. Right, it's the same concept as this. It's just like from the very start, like, okay, it separates it the way you can see it. The same thing down here, right? To fill out this one would be 2 times 7, 8 times 2, 7 times 4. So like if I showed here, it would be right row 1 times column 1, row 2 times column 1. So it's kind of the same idea, it just separates it from the very start. So let me solve this right here. Oh, it's going to be a while. Negative 6 times 7 is negative 42 plus, it's always plus, 2 times 4, which is 8, plus 4 times negative 9, so negative 36. I'll add that in a second. And then just the bottom one, 2 times 7 is 14. 8 times 2 is 16. So that's right, 30. And then 7 times 4 is 28. So 58 on the bottom. On the top, let's see, what is that? Negative 78 plus 8, so negative 70. There we go. So I kind of like that way. I mean, I grew up doing it this way, but I kind of like that way too. I'm gonna do that way again right here. If we can multiply them, I should always check that first. So this is a 2 by 3, and this is a 2 by 2. So they cannot multiply. Those are actually my favorite. Less work. The next one, it says use the calculator. So I'm gonna do it first the way right here, and I'll come back and do it with the calculator. So this one right here, same idea. Let's check if you could do it. This is a 2 by 3, and this is a 3 by 2. So yes, it can multiply because these guys match, and you would get 2 by 2. All right. So now let me actually set it up. Again, I'm gonna try set up. I'm gonna do the way I did it up here, method 2 way. I guess you could say. And that would be, let me rewrite this: 2, 9, negative 3, 4, negative 1, 0, and then 4, negative 6, negative 2, 2, 7, 1. All right, and then the way we're gonna do that is we're separated. You put up dotted lines, like right here. This one has it also. There's two columns in this one, so put a line between them also. And there you go. There's your matrix. It's a 2 by 2 matrix, just like it's supposed to be. So how did I fill this out? So for the one right here, it's the 2 that are attached to it. The first row and the first column. So these multiply corresponding parts. 8 plus negative 6 times 9 is negative 54. Plus negative 2 times 2 is 6. So that would be negative 48, so negative 40. That one, and then the one right here, same idea, right? So how do you get this one? Well, it's the first row and the second column. So 2 times 2 is 4. Plus 7 times 9 is 63. Plus 1 times negative 3. So 60, 64. Then we go to the bottom row. Right? So this row goes with the first column. So 16 plus 6 plus 0. Love the zeros. Right? So 4 times 4 is 16. Negative 1 times negative 6 is 6. And then 0 times ending is 0. So I get 22. And then the one right here. So just the last one, right? So row 2, column 2. 2 times 4 is 8, negative 7, and then 0. So I just get 1. And there's the answer. Now let's go on the calculator. So I'm going to show you the calculator. I'll do this on the calculator. So here's the 1084. Now if you can put matrices in the calculator, first thing I do is enter in our matrix. We're going to enter both these guys in. So I'm going to go second matrix. I got to turn it on first, I guess. Second matrix. And then all this is right here is this where you select them. So there's nothing entered in on mine because it's like reset. If I go to math, I do some math identities and go to edit. So again, I'm gonna go second matrix, then I'm gonna go all the way over to edit. So I can type in my matrix. So let's say this is A and that's B. Doesn't matter. So for matrix A, it wants to know what type of matrix you want. Well, this is a 2 by 3. So 2, 3. Hit enter, then it sets it up for you. And we can type in all the values. 2, 9, negative 3, make sure you put a negative, not a subtraction sign. 4, negative 1, and 0. Right, so I've typed it in. Now I'm going to get out, go back to matrix, hit edit again. I got to type in the other one. This one's a 3 by 2. So 3 times 2. Type it all in there. 4, 2, negative 6, 7, negative 2, and 1. So, and then I'm going to get out. And now I want to multiply these two. So I got to select my matrix. So go back to matrix. Select. So remember, that's what the names are for, so we select them. So select the first one. And then I'm going to multiply. I'll hit multiply. You actually don't have to. It's implied if you just leave it the way it is. But anyway, hit multiply. Then matrix. Then hit another one. Hit enter. It multiplies for you. We got the exact same answer. So that's how you do it in the calculator. Now, if you don't have a calculator, you can also do this on Desmos. So I'm going to bring that up. Right, so you just Google Desmos matrices. You go matrix calculator. It's currently still in beta, but it works very similar to the calculator. So the very first thing you got to do is you got to put new matrix, and then what type of matrix you want. So we wanted a 2 by 3, so 2 rows, 3 columns. Hit add, then fills it out for you. So all you got to do now is fill what matrix you want. Ours was 2, 9, so 2. Oops, that's not what I wanted. 2, 9, negative 3. So I guess here you just put negative. It'll figure it out for you. 4, negative 1. And 0. Now I can enter. And there we go. So now that's only the first matrix. I put the other next matrix in. So I put new matrix again. This time it's 3 rows and 2 columns. Hit enter. Type in the matrix. So 4. And then 2. And negative 6. 7. Negative 2. And 1. Hit enter. So now just kind of like the calculator, I have my 2 matrices labeled and they're in there. So now if I want to multiply them, I just got to do it on here. So I just hit select matrix A times matrix B. Hit enter. Well, you don't have to enter. It tells you the answer right there. Negative 40, 64, 22, and 1. So that's how you do it on Desmos. Right? It's still in beta as time recording, so let's keep that in mind. Anyway, the last two here, I'm going to try to do this real quickly so we can finish up. So this one, let's check. It is a 3 by 1. And this is a 2 by 1. Oh, 1 by 2, sorry. So you could multiply it, and you get a 3 by 2. I'm just going to do this by hand real quick. Let's do this way. It's a little cleaner, a little less messy. Right now, everywhere there's a space between it, you put a little dotted line. So if you look at it right there, you have your 3 by 2, right? 3 rows, 2 columns. Right? And if I want to fill out this one right here, let's just multiply that row times that column, so negative 15. This would be to 6. I can read my writing. So that's 6 times 3, which is 18. 0 times anything is 0. I'll put a 0 here because I already know the answer. And you get to this one right here, right? So row 1, column 2, so that's 5. And then row 2, column 2 is negative 6. And there we go. There's our answer. This is the next one. This is a 2 by 2. This is a 2 by 1. 2 rows, 1 column. So yes, you can multiply them again. And you get a 2 by 1. Let's keep doing the one we're doing. So I'm going to do 5, 4, 2, negative 1. Multiply that by negative 4 and 3. Again, anytime there's a space, there's actually only one space that's between these two. Like that. I like to show the new matrix. So you can see we get a 2 by 1, right? Two rows, 1 column. So if I want the top one here, I'm just going to multiply the corresponding parts. 5 times negative 4, negative 20. Once I multiply those two, I move on, and I just multiply the other two. 4 times 3, 12. Alright, so multiply the first pair, move on, multiply the next pair. Same thing down here. Multiply the first two, so that's 2 times negative 4, so negative 8. Plus, move on to the next two. Negative 1 times 3, negative 3. And you add them all up, you get negative 8 and negative 11. So there we go. That's an ugly matrix. This one. So this is the way I can make you do where you can't do in the calculator. I'm not sure if decimals can do it, but you definitely can't do this on the calculator. You can't put variables. So that's my hack to making sure you do it by hand, like we have to do here. Right, so I could multiply these two, and I would get a 1 by 2. So let's set it up. I'll set it the way I've been setting it, because I do think it's the nicest version. So I think, so this, if I'm putting variables, it's just so that it makes sure you do it by hand. That's the whole point of doing this. There's only one space, so I'm going to be between those two. So okay, we do get a 1 by 2 matrix. 1 row, 2 columns. Now all we do is do the same thing we always do. Multiply the first pair, right? So multiply 2 times negative 5u, which would be negative 10u, plus 0 times 5v, so that's 0. So this is just negative 10u. Then on this side, multiply the first two, negative v times 2, so that's negative 2v, plus, multiply the next two, 6 times negative 5v, so that's negative 30v. 2v plus 30v is negative 32v. Negative 2v plus 30v. There we go, we get that. And that you cannot do in the calculator. And I don't think you do on the version of decimals that's currently there. And I tried it, and you can't. It gets mad at you. It says you can't use variables. So, only way to do that's by hand, as of right now, that I know of. If the product matrix AB has dimensions 5, 8, and A has dimensions 5, 6, what are the dimensions of matrix B? So they're saying, hey, when you multiply these two things, multiply matrix A times matrix B, you're going to get a matrix that's 5 by 8. And matrix A is a 5 by 6. What must the dimensions of matrix B be? Well, there's actually many answers to this, but the first one is that one of these things has to be true. That is, if this is a 5 by 6, right, so they can multiply, this has to be a 6. And I was wrong. There's only one answer to this. I forgot that they actually give you the 8 right there. So this has to be a 6, so these have to match. And then you want transfer to be a 5 by 8. So this has to be an 8. So the dimensions of the matrix B are 6 by 8. Okay, that's the worksheet.